They broke this boy until he had nothing left. No hope, no reason to wake up in the morning. No one noticed he was disappearing. And the night he finally stood at the edge of an overpass, ready to let go of everything, the last person anyone would expect showed up. A 47-year-old gang second in command. A man who'd spent his whole life building power, not saving strangers. He saved the boy. And then he became him. Kim Duk-pal isn't the kind of man you'd expect to find hunched over a maths test, but there he is, 47 years old, second in command of the Chilsung gang, sitting across from a private tutor who's gently but firmly telling him he's failing. No improvement, no focus. The session gets interrupted when one of his men bursts in. They've caught a man named Kwang-soo, someone they suspect may have turned traitor. The tutor realizes in an instant who he's been sitting across from. And Duk-pal, rather than making a scene of the moment, asks his men to escort the teacher out carefully. This feared man, spending his afternoons trying to learn mathematics, treating a tutor with more respect than most people would expect from him. But the day isn't done with him yet. Kwang-soo grabs a blade and goes for the teacher. Duk-pal puts him down before he can blink. Fast, efficient, no wasted movement. Afterwards, they visit Chil-sung, the founder and leader of the Chilsung gang, in his office. Duk-pal raises his concern that Kwang-soo may have gone over to a rival crew. But Chilsung isn't worried. He tells Duk-pal something that stings a little. Give up on the studying. Stop wasting time on books. Focus on the gang, take over, lead. That's the only future Chilsung sees for him. Duk-pal leaves alone, sends his driver and bodyguard home. He lights a cigarette on the way, and then he sees him. A boy, 19 years old, school uniform, standing on the railing of an overpass, gripping the edge, his leg already swung over, his whole body shaking. He isn't hovering or hesitating. He's looking down at the road below, waiting for something. Duk-pal throws his cigarette, runs straight into the road, into the traffic, toward the boy. A trailer's coming. Duk-pal reaches him, gets hold of him, pulls him off the edge, and the trailer hits Duk-pal instead. When he opens his eyes, he's in a hospital bed. But something's wrong immediately. The hands he's looking at are young. The face in the reflection isn't his. He's inside Song Yi-heon's body, the 19-year-old he just pulled back from the edge. And the real Duk-pal, the body that spent 47 years in the world, is gone. The first thing he tries is to get back. He goes to his own memorial, tries to tell Jung Cheol and Dong-soo, his closest men, that he's still here, still around, just trapped inside someone else. They think he's a disrespectful kid playing games at the memorial of a man who's gone. They rough him up a little and drag him around before he manages to run. He makes it to the morgue. He finds his own remains laid out and goes to them, wraps his arms around them and tries to force his spirit back inside through sheer will. Nothing happens. What was left behind is already cold and going nowhere. The doctor tells him it's already over. He tries one more thing, goes back to the overpass, steps toward the edge. He wakes up 3 days later with a broken foot. It didn't work. He makes a decision. He'll live as Yi-heon, for now. And then he reads the diary that Yi-heon left behind. Song Yi-heon wasn't just a lonely kid. He was destroyed, systematically, every single day at school. Tormented, humiliated, made to feel like he was less than nothing. And outside of school, his father, one of Korea's wealthiest businessmen, Chairman Bae, had never acknowledged him. Yi-heon was the illegitimate son, financially managed through a cold secretary who delivered books and warnings and nothing resembling warmth. His mother, a former actress who gave up her career for this man, had started drinking heavily. No one protected this boy. No one even noticed how far underwater he already was. Duk-pal puts the diary down. Nobody fought for this boy. He's going to fix that. He checks himself out of the hospital, goes to Yi-heon's house. The house manager fills him in on what's been happening, including the fact that Mi-kyung, Chairman Bae's secretary, has been quietly enabling Yi-heon's mother's drinking, keeping her unstable, making sure she never gets clear-headed enough to become a problem for Mi-kyung's position. Duk-pal recognizes that kind of move. It's something people do in his world too. You don't take someone out with force if you can just erode them slowly. He's going to need to be smart about this. For the weeks before school reopens, he works. He trains Yi-heon's body every day. The kid was never an athlete, and Dukpal's fighting instincts mean nothing in a body that can't back them up. He studies Yi-heon's life, his teachers, the school hierarchy, who the tormentors are, and how they operate. He cuts his hair, sharp and clean. It changes his whole look. One afternoon at a bookshop, he runs into a boy who clearly recognizes him. This is Choi Se-kyung, class president, the kind of person who seems to have everything in perfect order. He helps Dukpal pick out the right textbooks without making a fuss, then sees him off. Dukpal doesn't know who he is yet, but he will. Then school opens. The moment Dukpal walks through those gates, something shifts. The other students can't quite place him at first. He looks like Yi-heon, but he doesn't move like Yi-heon. Yi-heon walked with his eyes down. This boy walks like he owns the hallway. The tormentors notice. Led by Hong Jae-min, the group that spent the better part of a year making Yi-heon's life a nightmare corners him almost immediately. They expect the reaction they always got. The flinching, the silence, the surrender. They don't get it. Dukpal talks back, steps forward instead of away. The fight doesn't go perfectly since Yi-heon's body isn't where it needs to be yet, and Jaemin lands a kick that drops him. But Kim Dukpal doesn't stay down. While he's out cold, he has a brief conversation with Yi-heon's spirit. The real Yi-heon, quiet and already worn thin just from existing, tells Dukpal to stop. Says it won't change anything, that he's past the point where fighting back matters. Dukpal doesn't accept that. He comes around to find Se-kyung with him in the clinic. Se-kyung starts noticing things immediately. Dukpal talks like someone decades older. References military service. Doesn't recognize Se-kyung even though the real Yi-heon supposedly knew him well. Dukpal covers it with the amnesia story. Accident, memory loss, new start. Se-kyung listens, but there's something behind his eyes that says he's already pulling the thread. And then Se-kyung's expression shifts. He says Yi-heon was never his friend. He says Yi-heon was his stalker, that he was harassing him the night of the accident, that he reported it, that the real Yi-heon is still out there somewhere. Here's what actually happened, and it's one of the most quietly devastating parts of this story. Yi-heon admired Se-kyung. He watched him from across the classroom, saw someone who moved through life with a confidence Yi-heon had never been allowed to have. In a school where he was invisible at best and a target at worst, Se-kyung represented everything he'd never been able to be. He wanted to be friends with him. That was all. But Jaemin saw him watching. And Jaemin, who'd already identified Yi-heon as someone worth targeting, took that simple, lonely longing and twisted it into something ugly. He spread the story that Yi-heon was a stalker, obsessive, that something was wrong with him. He turned a 19-year-old boy's quiet wish for connection into a source of public shame. And Se-kyung believed it, or at least acted like he did. Yi-heon never got to correct the record. Dukpal doesn't know all of this yet, but he's starting to see the pieces. He gets on with the business of surviving school. He befriends his desk mate and her friends, looks after them the way a much older man would, walks them home, makes sure they eat. The girls find it endearing. Strange but endearing. He hits the gym every day, building himself up, getting it to the point where his instincts and his capability actually match. One night, he slips into the gang's bathhouse. Two of his old crew members are there. He talks to them the way only Dukpal would, using names, references, shared history that no stranger could know. The two men bow before they've even fully processed what just happened. He gives them pocket money and walks out. Shortly after, Dong-soo arrives with Jaemin's crew who are looking to join the gang. Dong-soo hears from his men that a kid came in claiming to be Dukpal and doesn't think much of it, but Jaemin spots Dukpal leaving, and something in his gut tells him that boy isn't who he's supposed to be. Meanwhile, the friendship between Dukpal and Se-kyung is building slowly, cautiously on both sides. Se-kyung keeps watching him, testing him, asking questions designed to catch him in a lie. He even gets DNA evidence and runs a test. The results come back the same. Yi-heon is Yi-heon. But that doesn't satisfy Se-kyung because no test can explain the person standing in front of him. One night, Se-kyung shows up at Yi-heon's house unannounced. He's in the room looking for more evidence when he gets caught. Then Yi-heon's mother starts screaming downstairs, drunk and falling apart, blaming Yi-heon for everything she lost. Her career, her reputation, her life. Se-kyung watches Dukpal guide her to bed with a steadiness that no 19-year-old has any business having. Afterwards, Dukpal takes Se-kyung to a music library. They sit and listen together, and something between them softens a little. Dukpal says something that sticks. Staying silent only makes powerful people more powerful. That's not a teenager talking. That's someone who's spent decades watching what silence costs. Se-kyung gets a call from his father. Curfew. Demands to know where he is. Se-kyung lies. But when he gets home, his father already knows. He'd put a tracking device on the phone. Se-kyung confesses before anything else can happen. His father lets it go this time. Other times he's done worse. The punishments. The calculated fear. The way Se-kyung has learned to read every shift in his father's voice like a warning system. Se-kyung is surviving, not living. Just like Yi-heon was. The difference is that Se-kyung's much better at hiding it. The next day at school, Jaemin tries again. Shows Dukpal a video, footage from before, probably meant to remind him of his place. It doesn't work. Dukpal provokes Jaemin into throwing the first punch. When it's over, Jaemin's whole crew is on the floor. Jaemin looks up and asks who he really is. Dukpal tells him, second in command of the Chilsung gang. At this point, something's becoming clear. Dukpal isn't just fighting Yi-heon's battles, he's doing what nobody in this boy's life ever did. He's showing up. Every single day. Not out of obligation, not because he has any reason to, but because he read that diary and understood exactly what it means to be abandoned by everyone who was supposed to protect you. But if you were in his position, would you have kept going? A 47-year-old man, stripped of everything he built, dropped into a broken teenager's life with no guarantee anything gets better. Would you have stayed and fought? Because what's coming is going to test every part of him. The homeroom teacher sees the fight and pulls Dukpal into the staff room. She's sympathetic, but she also tells him something that stops him cold. Yi-heon could have filed a report with the school violence committee at any time. The process existed. The option was always there. Dukpal asks why no teacher ever pushed for it. Because Yi-heon refused to cooperate every time they tried. Of course he did. By the time the harassment had escalated, Yi-heon didn't believe anything would actually help. Reporting felt more dangerous than staying silent because if it failed, the retaliation would be worse. So he stayed quiet and kept absorbing it. Dukpal thinks about this. Then he goes to Jaemin with a different approach. File the report and they get expelled. Which sounds like a win, except that expelled students just go somewhere else and do this to someone else. So instead, he keeps them close, makes them his problem personally. Every time they step out of line, he corrects them on the spot. The other students watch, confused, as the boy who spent a year being destroyed by these kids now has them cleaning classrooms and keeping their heads down. He makes a list. Things to accomplish before the real Yi-heon can return to his body. Deal with the tormentors. Protect his mom. Graduate high school. Make friends. 4 things. Simple, but none of them easy. The friendship with Se-kyung keeps moving forward. Dukpal's genuinely bad at studying, and Se-kyung, despite every instinct telling him to keep his distance, finds himself staying late to help. There's something about Dukpal that pulls people in even when they're trying to resist it. An honesty that has nothing to do with tact. One night, Se-kyung watches him take a drink with pineapple in it, knowing Yi-heon's allergic. Doesn't stop him. He wants to see if he's really Yi-heon. Dukpal wakes up in the hospital with an allergic reaction. Se-kyung's right there, and he's done pretending. He demands the truth. He's crying, which for Se-kyung is enormous. A boy who keeps everything locked down, reduced to tears because he needs to apologize to someone he abandoned. He tells Dukpal he gave up on the real Yi-heon. That when Yi-heon came to him that night, scared and asking for help, Se-kyung turned him away. He believed Jaemin's version of events. He chose the easier story, and he's been carrying that weight ever since. Dukpal doesn't tell him the full truth yet, but he makes a promise. Se-kyung will get his chance to make amends. The real Yi-heon will come back. Until then, help me. Se-kyung agrees. Around the same time, Mi-kyung starts making her move. Mi-kyung's been managing Chairman Bae's affairs for years. She knows exactly what Yi-heon and his mother represent. A threat to her position, a potential claim on the company, a complication that needs to be removed cleanly. Chairman Bae's legal wife is in the hospital. If she doesn't recover, Yi-heon's mother could become relevant in ways that threaten everything Mi-kyung has spent years building. Her approach is layered. She's been feeding Yi-heon's mother strong medication in doses designed to create dependency, keeping her unstable, keeping her in a spiral. She's also been managing the family's finances in ways that leave them dependent without realizing it. And she's hired Dong-su's gang as muscle. She's been funding them, holding their debt, using them when she needs something done without her fingerprints on it. The first thing she needs done is for someone to be taken. Duk-pal and Se-kyung arrive at Yi-heon's house one night to find the attempt to take her already in progress. Mi-kyung's plan: take the mother, have her committed to a psychiatric facility, eliminate the problem quietly. Dong-su's men are there, and among them, trying to stay in the background, is Jae-min. He got pulled into the operation without fully understanding what it was. The two boys fight back. Jae-min runs the moment things stop going to plan. The police are called. And then Duk-pal does something that surprises Se-kyung completely. He lies to the police, tells them it was a misunderstanding, sends them away. Police involvement means exposure, official records, attention on Yi-heon's family that could help Mi-kyung just as much as it hurts her. Duk-pal spent his whole life in spaces where official systems can be turned against you as easily as they protect you. He doesn't trust the process. He'll handle this his way. Se-kyung goes home and lies to his father about how he got hurt. Mi-kyung, chief prosecutor, the kind of man who uses his position like a reflex, takes him back to the supposed location of the attack. Finds nothing, gets angry. Se-kyung faints from the pressure of anticipating what comes next. His mother calls and warns Mi-kyung, it passes for now. But Se-kyung stands at the window later and thinks about how Duk-pal fights for everyone around him, protects his mother, protects his friends, and Se-kyung can't even protect himself. Jae-min goes underground, stops coming to school. He knows Dong-su will come for him. He's right. Duk-pal and Se-kyung find him near the house one night, checking to see if the police got involved. Duk-pal takes him in, feeds him, offers him one night's shelter while making it clear they aren't friends and this isn't forgiveness. He still plans to make Jae-min answer for everything he did. Later, Se-kyung gets Jae-min alone and asks directly why he was with those gangsters, threatens to throw him off the balcony. Duk-pal overhears and steps in, and the interrogation that follows reveals something he wasn't expecting. The gang Mi-kyung hired is Dong-su's, his own second-in-command, the man who took over after his loss, being paid by the woman trying to destroy Yi-heon's family. Duk-pal has to deal with Dong-su, and to do that he needs to approach him as Kim Duk-pal, which means convincing someone who knew him for decades that the teenager standing in front of him is actually his boss who is gone. Se-kyung watches Duk-pal get taken. He's standing right there when the car pulls up and Duk-pal is dragged inside. He runs toward it and the car's already gone, and he's standing on an empty street with a phone that doesn't belong to him. His first instinct is to call the police. He even dials. Then he remembers what Duk-pal asked of him. He hangs up, and he starts thinking. Meanwhile, Duk-pal wakes up in front of Dong-su and tells him things. Specific things. Names, dates, shared memories that no outsider could possibly know. Dong-su can't fully believe it, but he can't fully dismiss it either. And in the process, Dong-su reveals what Mi-kyung actually hired them to do. Take the mother, have her committed, and get Yi-heon out of the country. Duk-pal offers him a way out, a restaurant, a clean life, something real, away from all of this. Dong-su isn't ready to take it, but he's not ready to move against Yi-heon anymore either. He'll watch, he'll wait. Se-kyung calls for more bodyguards at Yi-heon's house so the second attempt to take her can't go through. He takes a taxi across the city toward the hotel where he knows the gang is operating. His father tracks the phone, sees the location, and comes after him. Mi-kyung shows up at the hotel and uses every bit of his authority to threaten Dong-su into backing off. He's not doing it because he cares about Yi-heon. He's doing it because he wants his son away from this world. In exchange, he demands Se-kyung cut all ties with Yi-heon. Se-kyung agrees, because in that moment, it's the only way to get Duk-pal out safely. After everything settles, Duk-pal thanks him. Because Se-kyung came anyway. Despite the deal his father forced on him, despite every reason to stay safe, he came. Se-kyung goes back to publicly keeping his distance from Yi-heon, hanging out with Jae-hoon, who it turns out has been reporting Se-kyung's movements back to his father the entire time. The days pass. Dukpal passes an exam, slowly gets Jaemin walking back towards school. Things feel, for the first time, like they might actually hold. And then Se-kyung calls. His voice is wrong, flat in a way that's different from his usual control. He says he's standing somewhere. The same kind of spot Yi-heon chose. The same kind of edge. Dukpal runs. He gets there, gets Se-kyung back. And then he takes him somewhere completely different. To the coast, the beach. They spend the whole next day just existing, playing around, eating, riding bicycles along the water. Two young men who've never really been allowed to just be young. At the motel that night, Se-kyung finally talks, really talks, about his father, about the cameras hidden in his room, about how monitored and controlled his whole life's been, about the punishments for every small deviation from what his father expects, about the fear he carries around every single day and how good he's gotten at making it invisible. Dukpal listens, and when Se-kyung falls asleep, Dukpal takes his phone and calls Mi-kyung directly. He doesn't threaten, he doesn't beg. He tells the man plainly, "Your son isn't okay. He needs room to breathe. And if you don't get help for whatever is driving this in you, you're going to lose him entirely." Mi-kyung's furious. Dukpal doesn't move. The next morning, Dukpal meets Jong-chul and Dong-soo over breakfast. They've been tailing the boys the whole trip. He tells them enough to convince them he isn't an enemy. They decide he must be Dukpal's son. They become his uncles. They're in. Which means Dukpal now has backup. Back at school, Mi-kyung shows up. He tells anyone who'll listen that Yi-heon corrupted his son, took him overnight, got him drunk, led him somewhere inappropriate. The school turns. Students who were friendly start looking uncertain. Se-kyung faints from the stress. While he's with the nurse, Dukpal corners Mi-kyung alone, and he calls him exactly what he is, a tormentor. He tells him his behavior's hurting his son, that Se-kyung isn't weak. He's been under relentless pressure from the one person who was supposed to protect him. He tells Mi-kyung to get help for his own damage before he permanently destroys his relationship with his son. Mi-kyung tries to hit him. Dukpal doesn't move. Mi-kyung leaves and files a complaint with the principal, pushes for a school violence committee hearing. Dukpal watches him go and gets back to work. Now think about what's happening here for a moment. A man who built his entire life on violence and control is in a teenager's body, fighting battles that have nothing to do with money or territory or power. He's fighting for a boy's dignity. He's trying to give a damaged kid his father back. He's going up against a corrupt bureaucrat and a scheming secretary and a gang he used to lead. And none of it looks like what he used to be. At this point, what would you do in his position? Walk away from all of it and go back to the only world you've ever known? Or keep fighting every battle this boy never could? Mi-kyung, having lost Dong-soo as her weapon, finds another plan. She runs into Jaemin's former crew at the police station, boys who are angry and want someone to blame for everything going wrong. She approaches them with an offer: money, a lawyer, protection. All they have to do is file a report claiming Yi-heon attacked them. It doesn't matter that Yi-heon didn't do it. They have footage from before they can edit around. They can get medical documents, they can construct a case, and with Mi-kyung, a chief prosecutor who already wants Yi-heon out of his son's life, they have someone on the inside who can push the case in the right direction. Mi-kyung meets with Dukpal directly and lays it all out. The false report. The legal machinery pointed at him. She tells him she's left no evidence. She tells him he'll never catch her. She tells him it's over. She walks out smiling. Back at school, Se-kyung submits a statement saying he was never harassed by Yi-heon. His father expected him to withdraw. Instead, Se-kyung walks back to his original classroom and sits down next to Dukpal. Jaemin shows up too and tells them the other boys have filed their report. He's clearly conflicted. He was the one who actually hit those boys, not Yi-heon. He knows that if he testifies, the false case falls apart, but testifying means implicating himself. Dukpal meets with the boys personally, gives them a chance to walk back their statements. They don't take it. Mi-kyung's money has made them feel safe. At the police station, the officer tells Pal he needs a witness. The videos have been deleted. Without someone who was actually there, there's no case. He calls Dong-soo and Jong-chul, tells them to find Mi-kyung's private apartment, the one Chairman Bae secretly bought for her, and start building a file on everything. Then he waits. Meanwhile, Jaemin's sitting alone with his conscience. Se-kyung tracks him down and says what Pal won't say directly. You know the truth. Yi-heon never touched those boys. Pal isn't going to ask you to testify because doing that means implicating you, and he refuses to do that to someone he's chosen to protect. But you can still choose to do the right thing without being asked. Jaemin sits with that. The next morning he wakes up early. He cooks, he cleans up the house, he leaves a message for his sister. Then he calls Se-kyung to ask where the hearing's being held. Chil-sung shows up at the hospital. Pal's asleep. Chil-sung sits with the mother and tells her what her son's been doing, how hard he's been fighting, how far he's come. Then he says something that lands hard on her. Get yourself together before you lose him. He leaves before Pal wakes up, but his presence means something. This old man, who's seen everything and survived everything, came personally, which means he already knows. He's already figured out who's really inside that boy's body. He always does. The hearing. The false testimony is laid out. The manufactured evidence. The medical documents built around injuries Jaemin actually caused. It's a credible case on the surface, and with Myung-hyun's weight behind it, it should be enough. And then Jaemin walks in. He goes straight to the boys and grabs their tablet, the one with all the original footage, everything they recorded while they were doing it, all the real videos they thought they'd safely deleted from other devices. A fight breaks out. Myung-hyun watches his own son wade into the chaos without hesitating, throwing himself in to protect someone he chose over his own safety. Jaemin's confession combined with the footage brings the whole false case down. The prosecution arrests the boys. Pal's angry at Jaemin, not at what he did, but at what it cost him. Jaemin was one of the few people in this mess who could have walked away clean. He did it anyway. Jaemin says it simply. He couldn't live with himself if the person who showed him what it actually looks like to be a decent human being went to juvie for something he didn't do. As the boys are taken out, they still refuse to apologize, but Jaemin stops, turns, looks directly at the space where Yi-heon's spirit stands, and he says sorry. Genuinely, without qualification. He sees the real Yi-heon, and for the first time, that boy gets to receive an apology he was owed. After the hearing, Pal goes to the hospital. Chil-sung, Dong-soo, and Jong-chul are waiting. Chil-sung pulls Pal aside, looks at him for a long moment, and then, without needing to be told, he says, "I know who you are." Pal confirms it, tells him everything. Chil-sung cries, because he knows what this means. He's losing Pal again, not to his fate this time, but to a life that was never his. And somehow that's harder. He makes his men swear to stay and help. Then he lets go. Dong-soo's been doing his own arithmetic. He waits until Jong-chul falls asleep, pours 2 drinks, and sits across from Pal. He doesn't ask questions. He's past questions. He thanks him. Thanks him for being the kind of leader worth following, for years of loyalty that went both ways, for the fact that even in a borrowed form with a borrowed life, Pal showed up exactly the same way he always did. Pal intercepts Chairman Bae and Mi-kyung at the airport returning from an international trip. He lays out everything. The medication she used to keep the mother dependent, the attempts to take her, the orchestrated legal attacks. Chairman Bae, facing the possibility of this becoming public, is furious. He cuts Mi-kyung loose on the spot. She leaves with nothing. The chairman turns to Yi-heon and offers him official recognition, a real place in the family. Pal turns him down. He tells this man, directly and without cruelty, that he doesn't know how to be a father, that he was never there when it mattered, that Yi-heon doesn't owe him a relationship just because blood and money make it convenient now. The chairman has nothing to say to that. After Jae-hoon apologizes to Se-kyung on Pal's insistence, he lets something slip. Yi-heon said he was leaving soon. Se-kyung goes still. He runs Pal down and asks, "No more waiting. No more managing the uncertainty. The truth now, Dukpal takes him to the mausoleum, and there, in that quiet space, he tells him everything. The overpass, the trailer, waking up in Yi-heon's body, the diary, everything Yi-heon went through, everything Dukpal's been trying to finish before the real Yi-heon could come back. Se-kyung stands very still and absorbs it, and then he turns to the space where Yi-heon's spirit stands. And he apologizes. He tells Yi-heon he should never have believed the rumors, that when Yi-heon came to him that night, scared and reaching out, asking for the one thing he'd always wanted, which was just to be seen, Se-kyung turned away. He says, "You just wanted to be my friend, that was all, and I made you feel like even that was too much to ask for." He tells him he was never a problem, never too much, just a boy who wanted a friend. The cruelty wasn't in what Yi-heon felt, it was in the people who took that innocent thing and made it into a weapon. Yi-heon's spirit listens and forgives. This is the moment, because here's what this whole story was really about. Not swapping bodies, not the crime ring or the corrupt secretary or the prosecutor who terrorized his own son. It was about this. Song Yi-heon was a 19-year-old boy who wanted one real friend. That was his entire crime. That was the thing that got weaponized against him until he had nothing left. Something so small, something so human, the most ordinary longing in the world. And no one fought for him. Not his father, not his teachers, not the boy he watched from across the classroom, not the system that was supposed to protect him. Until a stranger saved him on an overpass and then decided that saving him once wasn't enough. In the days before the end, Dukpal settles everything he can reach. He makes sure Yi-heon's mother is on the right track, encourages her to go back to acting, promises to support her. He makes sure Jae-hoon apologizes to Se-kyung properly. He closes every open loop he can find. He talks to Yi-heon's spirit, tries to convince him to come back, to live the life that's been cleared and prepared for him, to take what Dukpal spent months building on his behalf. But Yi-heon's already made his choice. He's tired, not angry, not bitter, just genuinely, deeply exhausted in a way that goes past the surface. The life he was forced to live wore him down to something that can't be rebuilt overnight. He says, "No one deserves to live in this form more than you do. You already know how." He says it like a gift, like the most generous thing he's ever had to give. And he walks into the light. Dukpal graduates high school. A 47-year-old gangster who always secretly wanted to go to university, now in a young man's body, holding a diploma he earned himself. And beside him, at graduation and then at university the year after, is Choi Se-kyung, the friend Yi-heon always wanted, the one who finally showed up. In the end, this wasn't a story about second chances or swapping bodies or gangsters getting to relive their youth. It was about what happens when someone finally decides that a boy who was abandoned by everyone around him deserves to have someone in his corner. Yi-heon never got to experience that himself, but he got to watch it happen. He got to see someone tear through every wall that had been built around his life and fight for him with everything they had. And at the very end, surrounded by a real friend, a mother finally healing, and a future that actually existed, he got to rest. That's what it was always about. A boy nobody fought for, and the man who decided to. Leave your answer in the comments, subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.